Hello, everyone. My name is Joyce Cairns, and I'm from Neuron Learning. And today we're going to talk about working memory and students who are struggling with their working memory. So I'm just going to share my screen with you here, and we'll go through this slideshow. Right. So the working memory, there are three things to remember about this. It's a very important cognitive skill. It is the memory we use in the moment, and also it's the memory we need to use to manipulate information in our heads. So when we're listening, we have to process what it is that we're listening to. So if we imagine the classroom environment and the child is listening, processing what the teacher is saying, and absorbing that or trying to absorb it, and that information is going into his head, sticking to the working memory. He continues to concentrate and take in or process more information. That information stays in his head as he continues to concentrate and process more, and it goes on and on. Now, unfortunately, for children who have working memory issues, the information doesn't stick. So they're processing the information, and it's like it's going in one ear and out the other. If you can imagine the working memory being like Velcro, the information sticks to the Velcro, sticks to the working memory, and then the child can transfer the information from the working memory to the short-term memory and the long-term memory. So um, we need good working memory. We need to be able to process the information first, of course, and then hold it in our heads long enough to transfer it to the working memory, to the short-term and long-term memory, but also to hold it in our heads long enough to understand what it is that we're listening to. Now, in the classroom environment, about 80% of the day is spent listening for children towards the end of primary school and certainly in secondary school. And some kids find it really difficult to process what's going on and hold the information in their heads, like I've said. But even more so if there's background noise, it can be really tricky to filter out that background noise and focus on what's being said and engage that working memory. For speech, if we're telling a story, for example, we have to structure a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. So we've got to remember what's the first part of the story, what's the second part of the story, and what's the ending. And we've got to, if someone has told us the story, we have to summarize that if we want to retell it. So we have to fully understand it so that we can summarize it and then retell it. So it can be speech can be really difficult to maintain our train of thought, to think of the words we want to use, to retell a story, and to keep a fluid conversation going can be tricky, to stay on track as well and not ramble or to go off point. Also, very often in the classroom, a child he may be trying to listen and he may have got some bit of the information. The teacher asks the question and he thinks, okay, I know the answer to that question. So he puts up his hand or he blurts it out and the teacher says, no, wait your turn. So in future, he puts up his hand and he waits his turn, but other children are asked before him. And then when he's finally asked, he's forgotten what it was that he was going to say. He doesn't have the working memory capacity to hold on to that information for very long. And an example I often give and a question I often ask parents is, would your child ever interrupt or talk over you when you're having a conversation, say in a group setting like around the dinner table in the evening? And parents often say yes, and we encourage him or her to wait his turn and not to interrupt and don't talk over daddy or don't talk over mummy or whatever. And of course, by the time we get back to the child, he's forgotten what he wants to say, or he blurted it out because he thought, okay, I have something to contribute to this conversation. I want to get in there and say it. It's out there now, at least I've got it out. But if they have to wait too long, sometimes they can't remember it, or that it leaves their memory banks. Now we start when babies are born. They can listen, but they can't speak. But we build that up by exposing them to a lot of speech and a lot of songs, and we work on little nursery rhymes and stories and all the rest of it. And if we just take a look at nursery rhymes are fantastic for building up all of the cognitive skills. Getting the rhymey sounds, processing those sounds that sound like, and remembering the lines of the words of the verses, the lines of the verses, and learning off all the verses. That's great for building up the memory skills. But also you can ask kids about what happened in the story, what happened to Jack, what happened to Jill, what did Jill do, and where were they going, what were they up on a hill or whatever. So building up those comprehension skills by building up all these, by asking lots and lots of questions is really great. But if a child doesn't have good working memory skills, it's very difficult for them to learn the songs or the rhymes, and it's very difficult for them to remember the stories. For reading, we have to decode what we're reading, and as we're decoding, we're absorbing. We have to engage that working memory to absorb what it is that we're reading, so that we can make sense of the sentences and the paragraphs and the pages and pages of information that we're reading. And we have to keep doing that until we get to the end of the chapter, or until we get to the end of the book, so that we can talk about the book, and we can talk about the different chapters, and we can discuss the characters and the theme, and all the different comprehension strategies that we may have to look at when analysing a book or a story. But in order to do that, we have to be able to absorb what it is that we're reading first and hold it in our heads. And it's not good enough to do it just till the end of a sentence or two. We've got to do it for, as I say, the whole chapter or the whole book. Spellings can be an issue, learning spellings, and sometimes kids can manage to learn the spellings for the Friday test, and even manage to get 8 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 sometimes. But when you ask them 2 weeks later, the spellings are gone. And I used to often think it would be when I used to drive our kids into school, we'd be driving to school and we'd be, learning the spellings on the way in. And I often wished the spelling test would be first thing in the morning when they got in, because they were fresh in their head, they were there in their working memory. But if they waited until later, if the teacher waited until the end of the day, they may not do as well in the test as they would have done if it was earlier in the day. And very often, if I asked them what the spellings were, 2 weeks later they were gone. And that can be, we need good working memory, first of all, to learn the spellings, but then we have to transfer them short-term memory and the long-term memory, so that when we're writing a story or we're writing sentences a week or two later, we're able to retrieve those words and retrieve the spellings and spell them a few weeks later. Mental arithmetic can be really tricky as well. We need good working memory to manipulate information in our head. So this problem here, 38 plus 15 minus 9 multiplied by 2, what is the answer? So when I saw this problem, I automatically added 38 and 10 and then 5. So it was 48 plus 5 is 53, minus 9 is 44, multiplied by 2 is 88. Now, if anyone had interrupted me in the middle of that problem, I wouldn't have been able to, pick up where I left off. The working memory, I need to go back to the beginning and start that problem from the beginning again. But it's the working memory that I need to manipulate all that information in my head to get to the answer. Did I say 84? The answer is 88, isn't it? Yeah. Multiple choice can be tricky. So when we're doing multiple choice questions, the child or the student has to read the piece of text. So it might be just a few sentences, it might be just a paragraph. And then there's one answer, one correct answer, but there are four options, and the student has to choose from one of the four options. So, so they read the text and they go down and they read the first answer, A. But then they're not quite sure, so they go back up and read the text again, back down to A. Okay, I'll try read B, answer B, and then okay, better read the text again, back down to C, up to the text, down to D, up and down and in and out and all around, and it can take ages because they can't hold the information in their head to figure out which is the right answer. 80% of what children do in class by the end of primary school is listen. And certainly in secondary school, 80% of what they do is listen. And it can be really hard for children to engage the working memory, listen to what the teacher is saying, absorb what the teacher is saying, understand it, summarize it, and then take notes and write them down. And a lot of our teenagers who are struggling learners struggle to take accurate notes. Now, some schools are happy to provide children with notes. Some teachers will provide the notes. Some teachers don't work from notes, so they may not have notes to provide. But let's say a child has 5 classes a day and he gets 5 sets of notes. At the end of the week, he could have 25 sets of notes. At the end of a month, he could have 100 sets of notes. And that can be a real problem if he's not collating those on a daily basis and keeping track of which notes belong in which folder for which subject, etc. So it can be all down to the fact that his working memory isn't as good as it should be, and so perhaps he has to use these compensation strategies, getting the notes, collating them so that he can refer to them when he's revising for exams. In exams, there are many accommodations that children can be entitled to when they're struggling learners. And one of them is a scribe, for example. So this student, he's dictating to a scribe in a state exam. And as he dictates, she writes. And the thing about that is she's only human, so she's dictating exactly what he's writing. But if she writes a word instead of a different word to the word he dictated, or he thinks she's written a different word to the word he dictated, that can be a distraction. And he is trying to hold the next piece of information in his head until she's finished writing. And by the time she gets around to writing that next piece of information, it might be gone, or he has to try and retrieve it again. Or if there was a distraction because she miswrote something, or she wrote something different to what he thought she should be writing, that can be a distraction. He can lose what it is that is in his head. Now, we've been working with struggling learners for over 22 years. We work with the Fast Forward program, and there are over 300 research papers and case studies for this program. There are 9 components. That's not including the fluency work that kids do, but there are 9 Fast Forward components and a total of 45 exercises. Every single one of those 45 exercises focus on working memory along with other cognitive skills. So they work on processing, they work on concentration, they work on sequencing. So I'm just going to give a few, just a little example of the kind of exercises that kids would work on. So this is, our younger children would work on an exercise like this, taking instructions. It's a listening comprehension exercise where the child is given an instruction. So the child may be asked, with the he might be asked, touch the yellow square with the red circle, or with the blue circle, touch the green square. Now, small circles and small squares may be added to the screen, and he may be asked something like, with the small green circle, touch the large blue square. Now, the second instruction has a heavier working memory load, and trying to keep track of everything in that would be more difficult. So this exercise is aimed at starting from an easy level and building up the working memory so it can remember a heavier working memory load or more elements. So the latter instruction would have had about 8 elements to that instruction. And so we build, the program will build up that working memory capacity. This instruction, for example, is add all the small fish except the blue one. So this one would be, this exercise is more for the older kids. The teenagers over 12s would work on an exercise like this. This is also a listening comprehension exercise, and the narrative for this would be the girl who is big is following the clown who is small. And so each of the pictures, as you can see, is looks very similar, but there's only one correct answer. And there is no written assistance to this. It's completely listening, a listening skill. So the child has to listen, absorb what the narrator is saying, and then hold that in the working memory as he scours through the exercise or the pictures and decides which one is the correct match. Excuse me. This exercise is also a working memory exercise. Sorry, excuse me. And so with working memory, it is more difficult to remember words that sound alike. It will be easier to remember words that are completely different. So here we can see that the ending to all of these is the same. So plesk, tresk, spesk, and these are nonsense words. And it's harder to remember nonsense words as well because you're not familiar with the words. And here the words are written, but in the earlier version of this, the words aren't written, which actually makes it more difficult. And so the idea here is to remember where they heard plesk, and then as they go down here, is there a plesk here, a plesk here, a plesk there, tresk, spesk, and they have to do it. They have to match it as quickly as they can without clicking too often. So they're really focusing on the sounds. They're really focusing on remembering where they heard them, and where they saw, in this case, where they saw the word. So it can be really, really tricky to do this, and it's a fantastic exercise for the working memory. Now, if anyone has any questions, if you're interested in what we do and anything that we've gone through today, you're welcome to contact me directly. This is my email address, joyce@neuronlearning.com. And we can arrange a time to talk if you'd like to talk about a particular student or your own child, or if you're interested in working with a program with students in a clinic setting or in a practitioner setting, please feel free to contact me. Thank you very much. Bye for now.